Welcome everyone who's joining us. My name is Mike Gibbs. We'll begin shortly. Michael Abraham, are you the one that we trained that's working as a security architect in the UK right now? Or are you another Michael Abraham?
Hello?
Yes, Michael.
Hey, Mike, Alonso.
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
I'm very well. I've just actually finished work and yeah, no, it's been great, guys. Like I said, I think the timing you couldn't make it up. It's a coincidence, really. Like I said, big, thank you guys obviously for all that you do. And Mike, I was one of your legacy students. I was in the server. Remember when you kind of like believed in me, you gave me all the support that I needed. And literally just pursued with the program. And yeah, literally, I kind of went AWOL for a bit, and that wasn't me kind of like just ignoring. I just kind of like, like we discussed in the program, you set your goals,
Mhm.
you make a plan, and you kind of just stick with it. And that's kind of what I did. Literally, just went through the program and just found myself. Yeah, even LinkedIn, I kind of like moved away from that. I was like, I just need to focus on my goals and that's it. That's always going to be there. I can come back to it at some point.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I did. And then, like literally in August, it just happened so quickly. Like one thing led to another with the interview, and yeah, just pretty much nailed it. Um, I got asked, like I remember being asked about questions about, like, tell us about like virtualization, tell us about your people skills, there was none of this, coding and stuff, and like I said, I was very honest, and I said, look, I'm not a coder, I'm an architect, this is what we focus end-to-end solution design, uh, and just open and honest that I'm always learning. So I don't claim to know everything, but I can learn. The technical stuff you can easily pick up and learn, but the communication and being able to translate technical knowledge to non-technical stakeholders and stuff, so that's a skill that you need to be an architect as well as other stuff. And yeah, no, so that went really well. And I did the interview in the morning, I remember. And like an hour later, my recruiter called me and was like, Mike, you got the job? I was like, really? I just couldn't believe it. And yeah, it was just, led one thing into another. I left my job. I started. Obviously, I can't really say where I'm working. It's
I
more of an
understand.
NDA part of my contract, but quite, like I said, defense stuff that we're dealing with.
Mm.
And like I said, right now, like literally, I was in a design review meeting just now, and we're working on implementing privileged access management into a solution. So just a lot of it is kind of everything, Mike, that we've kind of you've taught on the plan, and you've said from the get-go, most of my job day to day is doing meetings, meetings, design reviews, none of this, configure the tech and exactly what you've been saying, from day one. And it is crazy. Meetings, 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 design reviews, more meetings. Yes, maybe I'll do some initial reports that I'll write out. I did a full report for the security controls that we had in place. So I, reviewed them, gave my recommendations of what we need to do to improve that, such as, we had like, for example, again, example, we had a checkpoint firewall, next generation, but I recommended that we should have two, because we want no single point of failure. So, stuff like that. And that's it, making those literally everything that the program talks about. And this is
So,
again the architect program. Everything that I learned is now being, implemented in the real world.
so, Michael, I want to say one thing. One, it was an awesome surprise to see you here. Two, Michael was a student of ours, and I remember when we first spoke, Michael, you were a student at the time, and we talked about you becoming an architect, and you were so worried about your experience, and I said that if you had the right skills, you'd have any opportunity you wanted. And then you were so worried about coding, and I said, "Don't worry, we're not going to code, we're not going to configure, we're not going to do this." So, Michael, I'm so excited, I'm so happy for you, and what a great surprise it was. I'm always thrilled to see these.
Yeah, no, definitely. And when I heard about the security architect program, it was just kind of like, I'll kind of just wanted to come by and show my support, I suppose, and just kind of give back because you guys, and whoever has joined, I will say, firsthand, like, stop listening to everything on the net. Everything that you need is here, right in this program, you know, and the real life skills, the community that we have and everything that you need to know on a day-to-day basis. Mike's got you covered, the team, Alonso, Chow, Chris. Um, I've been there from the beginning. And so if you just take the knowledge that Mike is giving in his program and start applying it in the real world and really, really focus, like the tech, it's not even about the tech, it's really about the communication skills, everything that Mike teaches, your business acumen. It's about the business requirements. How can you make, um, that informed decision? How are you going to benefit the business? And so you need to be able to communicate. I got this job not because of my technical background. It was more of my ability to, how I communicate, how I present myself to people. Am I going to be able to talk to multiple people, or am I just going to be a closed mind? Because and engineers are like that because I was like that. You kind of very closed minded. You just kind of keep yourself to yourself, and when you're doing this job, you got to be able to get out there, put yourself out there. You got to really be, an extrovert and really, you know, get involved with people. And because that's what you're going to be doing, a lot of communication, a lot of talking, a lot of informed decisions. And then obviously at the same time, yeah, you can demonstrate your knowledge, that you're well versed. Like for me, security was interesting, and so I pursued, learning more about the security. Staying on top of topics, defense in depth, zero trust, pass keys, all that kind of stuff, and everything else that's coming along now with AI. And so, everything, you don't need to know everything. You just need to be willing to apply everything you learn. And Mike's got you covered. And so I'm here obviously just to kind of show some support to Mike and say, it does work, the program, it's not a gimmick. It's not a con, it really does work. You're gonna find all these courses, course CA, you got all these boring courses, but Mike, the way he's implemented his training program, the first of the kind, you ain't gonna find anything like this. So um, is the best, and I can say this because, like I said, I got a job now. I'm a cybersecurity architect, and I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm kind of, a few years ago, it seemed impossible, but Mike believed in me, and he said, "You can do it," because I believe in you, and that was all the hope I needed. And so, I bought the program, and that was it. I stuck with it, persevered, resilience, time, and that's it. And so, this now he's got his security architect program literally out, and it's the best. I've already reviewed it, already seen everything that's on it, and everything that's on it is literally up to date. It's everything that the industry is covering right now, everything that I'm doing in my job, and you ain't gonna find anything better. So there you go.
Thanks so much, Michael. So now I'm going to talk about how to become a security architect. Michael Abram was a student of ours. I'm so thrilled to hear from you. So we're going to talk about how to become an architect. Alonzo was going to tell everybody that we have 50% off of all of our architecture programs right now. We're just having a really good time. We're so excited about our security architect program, so we decided to extend it to everything for a little while longer. And now we're going to talk about how to become an architect. So whenever you listen to someone present, you have to figure out where they're from. What's their background? Are they credible? So I'll tell you a little bit about me. Uh, Prior to being an architect, I was practicing internal medicine. But after that, 25 years ago, I decided to move into IT architecture. And I was a chief architect for an entire vertical at Cisco. I was a principal architect at Riverstone. Now there are Nokia and Alcatel-Lucent, the people that all went to those two companies. I was a principal architect at Comcast, and I was a senior architect at MCI WorldCom in the last 25 years. I've been considered an expert, traveled the world, written books, presented at every conference you can think of in every country you can think of on enterprise architecture, network architectures, and security architectures. And I've spent 2 decades helping people just like you get your first tech job, get promoted in tech all over the world. And I have students hired at Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, Tela, Zscaler, Palo Alto Networks, Netspoke, and many and every other company you can think of. So that's a little bit about my background. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about why I think it's one of the best times to become a security architect. I'm then going to talk about what does a security architect really do. And I have to talk about this because so many people want to become security architects and they learn every skill that's not related to architecture. And if you're going to train with us, if you're not going to train with us, I just want you to have this opportunity to work in this great architecture career. So I'm going to make it very clear what we do. And then I'm going to talk about the skills that it takes to become a security architect. And whether you train with us or you want to go get an MBA and learn some other skills somewhere else, you'll know what these skills are because I love architecture career. I lived 25 years as an architect. It's now my turn to train the next generation of architects. And that's what I love to do. We'll also talk about the certifications we recommend. And obviously, we teach all the certifications we recommend included in this program. And then we'll talk about how we build our architects. But we'll have about 60, 80, 90 minutes left over where you can ask me anything. And if you think you're ready for our security architect job, I'll ask you some questions. If you want me to check your LinkedIn profile, I'll look at it. Anything I can do to help you while we're all here. Let me just bear with me for 1 second. I don't realize my phone was not silenced and it will go crazy since apparently it got 4 messages in the last 30 seconds. So, why do I think now is probably the best time to become a cybersecurity architect? The latest estimates are that there is a 5.5 million person shortage or a workforce gap. And that's according to an ISC squared annual report. Now, Forbes recently said that there's about 750,000 open cybersecurity jobs right now in the United States. 87% of organizations had at least one security breach in 2023. 87%, that's everybody. And that was attributed to lack of cybersecurity skills, according to the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is so worried about the lack of cybersecurity skills that they believe there could be an 85 trillion, I'm sorry, an $8.5 trillion loss to the global economy by 2030. And 90% of organizations, according to ISC Squared, report gaps in their security teams. And here's another scary statistic, and it comes from Fortinet. 62% of IT decision makers, like a CIO or CISO, for example, say their biggest challenge is finding people with capable skills in networking and security. So that in and of itself shows you why the average security architect salary is about $229,000 a year, according to Glassdoor, with a range of 183 to 292. That feels a lot low to me because individuals with higher business acumen often earn much more. But that's the pay range that you see on Glassdoor. One of the things that I love about all architecture careers is we can't be replaced by AI because we don't code, which AI can do. We don't configure, which AI can do, or even maintain the systems, which to some degrees AI will be able to do that it can't do now. Nothing of what we do as an architect can ever be performed by AI. And when you hear what we do and you hear the person to person communication and the translating between business needs and the technology requirements and facilitating meetings and managing vendor relationships and managing stakeholders and selling, you'll realize you need a person for that. And that's another one of the reasons I love this career. I've also been an architect for 25 years, and other than medicine, it's the only thing that I know. And medicine and architecture are pretty much the same career. So the first thing everyone has to understand is that a security architect is a hybrid executive slash technology professional. We are not engineers. We don't touch the technology. We don't configure the technology. And we're concerned about very different things than the engineers actually are. For us as architects, we're about designing a strategy protects the organization, its assets, and its people. We are not the engineers that configure the firewalls. That is a completely different set of skills. So what do we do as architects? So what is the security architecture process, so to speak? Generally speaking, when we go to a client, we have to work with their executive team. We have to know where the business is going. Now, If this is not obvious, let's make it clear. If you have to protect someone, let's say you had to protect a person, if you didn't know where the person was going, how would you build a protection plan for them? Like if you had to transport a person from point A to point B, where would you have your follow cars? Where would you have your lead cars? What kind of physical security? You couldn't plan it if you didn't know where the person was going. So same thing in any security architecture. We have to know where that business is going. Otherwise, the security will either keep that business from going where it needs to in the future, which means we hurt the business, which means we lose our jobs, and we don't want that. Or the other thing is it's going to make it things not work the way we need it to, or keep the business from expanding. So we have to be able to understand where the business is going. So we have to start with the executive team. Now we have to understand what we're going to protect because we have to understand what it is. If we have $1 billion formula, for example, we're going to spend some money protecting it. Now, I love my cat Cindy. She's really cute. And I have a lot of photos of my Cindy. I have 5 photos of me in the last 20 years and 5,000 photos on my phone of my cat. I don't know how it happened, but I'm not going to spend $1 billion to protect the photos of my cat. But I would the secret formula for some new quantum computer, or I would for the secret formula for a new GPU that would be 3 times faster than NVIDIA's. That would be worth billions. So the security architect, after knowing where the business is going, learns about the organization's assets, and we have to learn about the organization's risk tolerance and what industries they may be, because they may have certain levels of regulation. Now, once we understand the organization's assets, we have to calculate what are the value of those assets. And we also have to calculate the risk of those assets being exposed to danger. So, for example, if I have $1 billion asset and there's a 10% risk that it's going to get hacked this year or lost this year, our risk for the year is calculated as $100 million. Now, if the risk is $100 million and your security mitigation plan is $50 million, a business would say that is a good investment. But if the risk is $100 million, but your security architecture is $200 million to mitigate it, that organization may want to transfer the risk to an insurance company or manage the risk in a different manner. And you are part of the strategy to help with that risk management. Now, at that point, once we understand the organization, we understand the assets, we have to understand how the organization does things, especially in security. So what is the process? How is a product sold? How is a product serviced? What are the steps when a customer walks in the building from the time to sell? See, here's the thing. Anytime we put security in, we're putting controls in. And imagine if we have to go from one room to another room to another room in order to be able to get to the destination. But we have a security control that keeps somebody from getting from one room to the other room. Well, they're not going to get there. And the key is with the business processes, we have to understand the business process because the business process will determine where the pain points are, the touch points with the customer, where the opportunities potentially could be to attack the system, but they also tell you how we need to allow the system to talk to who. So if we don't know what's talking to what and we try to add security, we break the environment again. So we have to understand the organization's business process, map them out, much like an enterprise architect. How are things done? Now, once we understand the assets, how the organization's works, where the organization's going, now it's the time to start evaluating the organization's policies, the organization's control. So at this point, we have to typically build a team of people because we're not dealing with small environments as architects. It's not like people hire an architect to work in a two-person company. They hire us to work in big global companies. So we're going to have to create a team that's going to evaluate the client's environment, and things will be the facilities, the network, the data environment, the compute environment, the storage environment, the applications environment, their identity strategies, the organization's legal policies and regulatory processes. We have to evaluate what are we dealing with? Is it good enough? Will it meet our needs? And if it doesn't meet our needs, now this is where we figure out what our strategy is. What is our risk mitigation plan? What kind of controls? There's some controls, for example, that are free, like an access control list on a router. That's free. But there are other controls that are going to get expensive. They could be firewalls, they could be IDS, IPS systems, they could be data loss prevention strategies. These things could be many, many other types of controls that we have. And the key is we need to figure out what kind of controls we're going to use to protect the assets that we have. So for us, at that point, we have to create a new architecture with our architecture team. And at this point, once we have an architecture, we know what we know what we'd like to build. So now we've got to go back to the client, go get some input from their stakeholders. Will this work for your business unit? Will this work for your business unit? Will this work for your business unit? And then and at that point, if the stakeholders say yes, this will work for us. At this point, the organization typically, the architect typically with the account team sells the architecture to the client, and the client adopts it, and we create a statement of work, that kind of thing, the paperwork with the adoption. The engineers come in and build it. And then when the build is done, it's typically maintained by an security operations center. So the key here, I hope everybody heard, was we're dealing with executives, we're learning about the business. We're dealing with stakeholders, we're learning about their business units. We're dealing with stakeholders, we're getting their buy-in, we're getting their support. We're dealing with the business executives to find the assets of the business so we can figure out a risk mitigation plan with them. We're creating architecture teams. We're leading architecture teams. We're selling. We're presenting. We're negotiating. That's what went into that. But what else do we do? So we don't just design architectures as a rule. We also help create security policies. For example, the overall arching security strategy for the organization. We create incident response procedures. So if this were to occur, which people come in and deal with the incident, who contains the incident, who works on eradicating the incident, who speaks to the press, which lawyers need to come in and speak to regulators, what have you. Do you call law enforcement? Do you not call in law enforcement? So that's a big part of what we do as architects, as well as the creation of incident response procedures. Another big thing we do as security architects is the creation of disaster recovery plans and business continuity plans. So did all of it sound like planning to you? I hope it did. I hope it all sounded like planning and consulting. We ask the business questions, we learn a lot about their business, and we create a planning strategy for them. And as soon as we're done one thing, we'll be going to the next and the next and the next. Now, in order to be a good consultant, in order to find things from executives and systematically calculate risk and systematically come up with a risk mitigation strategy that's going to take you to lead a team of 15 to 50 people, let's talk about the skills you need to do it. Now, some of these are going to be business skills, and some of them are going to be technical skills. Now, if we're talking about an enterprise architect, it's about an 80% executive role, 20% technical skills. If we're dealing with a cloud architect, it's probably 66 to 75% business skills and 25 to 30 or some percent technical skills. Now, when we're talking about a security architect, this is a specialty architect, which means this has a greater technology focus than other architects. So the security architect role may be 60% business and 40% tech. So there's still a lot of tech knowledge in this role because you have to become a tech expert on one thing. So let's talk about the skills you need to be able to do this. One is you have to have something called CXO relevancy because you have to speak to the organization's leadership. You're not going to get the budget for your $80 million security architecture without speaking to the CISO and potentially the CFO and the CEO. You need somebody to write the check, and it's not going to be the tech team. So you're going to have to know how to communicate to the C-suite. Honestly, I think Cisco sent me to about $20,000 of CXO relevancy training. Business acumen or business knowledge. If you don't understand business and you can't calculate risk and you can't determine an organization's strategy and an organization's weakness, you're never going to be able to design any architecture that's going to help with the organization and its business. So you need to know business. Now, granted, if you're with us, we're going to teach you the CXO relevancy skills, the business acumen that you need. But if you're not with us, you can get many of these skills in an MBA. I didn't have access to a course like this, so I had an MBA and I took about $50,000 to $100,000 of additional courses on this because it will change your life. And thankfully, Cisco and other companies were very happy to pay for it because it made me better architects for them. Now, leadership skills. This is a job where you're only as good as your team. There's an African proverb, which, is probably my favorite saying in the world. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Now, as an architect, it's not how good you are. It's about how good of a team you can build and how good you can lead that team and what that team can do and produce. So you're going to have to have very, very good leadership skills. So, of course, we teach these skills. Now, stakeholder management skills. So Have anybody ever tried to herd cats? Anybody get in the room with 10 cats and try to get the cats to do everything that you really want at the same time? Well, I love cats, and I'm going to tell you, it's a really tough experience. I only have one cat, though. Now, as a architect, what's going to happen is you're going to have to interact with the business unit owners and other key stakeholders or people that have a stake in the business or a significant interest in the business. So imagine you're working with the General Electric and they have 50 different business divisions, and your architecture is going to affect 30 of those divisions. You're going to have to go speak to the executives at each division that run the division and figure out how your architecture is going to impact their business, and you're going to have to get their support. So otherwise, no, the architecture won't go anywhere. So you're going to have to have very strong stakeholder management skills. Of course, we teach this, but these are really critical skills for the architect. Now, I'll tell you, this is going to help you in life. You're not, to be an architect, you have to learn to sell. I'm an introvert. I'm a shy guy. Yes, it's actually true. But I learned how to sell. And I learned how to sell because I knew it was one of the most critical skills for my career. I learned how to sell because early in my youth, I tried to get a patient to take a medication that I had prescribed her, and she didn't want to take it. And the physician that I was trained had trained me years earlier said, "Mike, learn to sell." And I was able to convince my patients to take the medications they needed. And that to me was big. But you know what those sales skills convinced me to be able to do? To first sell your ability to get a job in the first place when you don't have the perfect resume, you need sales skills. But you'll have to be able to sell the architecture to the client. You'll have to be able to show the client what this architecture will do for them. And if you can't sell it to them, you made beautiful PowerPoints, beautiful Word documents, and there's no project. It's just documents that you wrote, architectural plans that go nowhere. Now, as an architect, you're going to have to translate between business executives and technical people that know how to build this. And you can't make mistakes. Errors in communication cause errors. So you're going to have strong communication skills, executive communication skills, and the ability to communicate with technology professionals. Of course, we teach all of these skills, but if you're not with us, learn them. Presentation skills. You know, one thing you do as a security architect is you give a lot of presentations. And you know, initially that sounds scary, I know, but at some point you get to the point where you just deliver presentations and it's just normal for you and it's easier than drinking a cup of coffee. But you know, we'll get you good at them. But the point is, you're going to give a lot of presentations. As it comes to getting hired, by the way, the last part of most security architect jobs are actually a presentation in front of a panel of people. They want to see if you can sell and if you can present effectively. But you'll be presenting to executives, you'll be presenting to technical audiences, you'll be presenting to stakeholders, you'll be presenting at conferences, presenting at executive briefings. You're going to need a lot of presentation skills. Don't worry, we'll work on them. You're also going to have to train what you call executive presence. Executive presence is how you take up time and how you take up space and how you get seen as a leader. I had a lot of training in this. Prior to learning an executive presence, I used to say this. Hi, everybody. My name's Mike. Um, I'm from an internal medicine background, but now I'm your network architect. That doesn't inspire confidence in people. So I received a lot of training in how to use presence, how to take up time, how to take up space, where to vary the vocal tone. And we do this and we teach this to our students because you're going to need this in the job. If you're going to walk into the room with an executive and you're going to be able to provide that executive strategic consulting, I can help you manage the risk for your $1 trillion company. You're going to have to be taken seriously as an executive. So that's why we provide executive presence training. If you're not with us, there's good executive presence coaches. Vendor management. You know, if people finish an AWS security certification, they think that AWS is the security that you're going to use their 10 little tools. Here's the reality. When it comes to security, we're going to have 10, 20, 30 security vendors we're going to be dealing with. And guess what? We're going to have 200 plus application vendors we're typically dealing with, and networking vendors and other vendors we're going to deal with. So we're going to have to be able to figure out what's coming on in all different directions. So we're going to have some very good vendor management skills. We're going to have to be able to compare different vendor products to see what's going to be better for our solution, to have vendors come in and give us presentations and information when we need it. And that's going to be a critical skill for a security architect. And negotiation. You're going to be negotiating constantly. So these are the business skills. And I can tell you right now, I've trained architects all over the world. If people don't have these skills, they almost never get hired, no matter how good they are on the technology side. Because this is probably still 60% of the role. Now, let's talk about the technical skills. And you do have to deal with technical skills. And one of these technical skills I'm going to talk about is going to sound like a business skill, but I call it technical because it's the thinking, noodle working, doing stuff we kind of do. So the first one is risk management, and then the rest are all technical. But from a risk management perspective, we're going to have to identify risks and quantify risks. We'll have to be able to assess risks. We'll have to be able to prioritize risk. We'll have to understand how to design controls to minimize risk. We'll have to be able to develop risk mitigation plans. We'll have to know how to create and maintain, say, a risk register. So that's about risk management. Now let's talk about network security, which is one of my favorite things because I'm a networking person. Now, I could say 50% of the security we can do is actually done on the network. And you'll have to learn network security, whether the things being like network access control, for example, 802.1x, that if you try to plug the wrong MAC address into a switchboard, if it's set up, it'll shut it down. Network access controls could be an access list, like a layer 3 access list, like a packet filter. They could also be layer 2 access lists, meaning a MAC address to a MAC address if you're not on a cloud. Network access controls could include VLANs, segmenting users based on VLANs. I'm sorry, that's more network segmentation. But network segmentation we could do could be things like VLANs, where if you've got two users in the same switch, but they're in different VLANs, they can't talk to each other. And we can have clusters of people we want to talk to each other and clusters of people we don't want to talk to each other. We can create things like a private VLAN where we have two users in the same subnet and they can't talk to each other. If we can see large amounts of data coming at our network that doesn't make sense, we can use what's called traffic shaping and policing to reduce the network, to reduce, say, the impact of a worm. We can prioritize important traffic over non-important traffic on the network. And by doing so, if a worm or somebody tried to take us down with a DDoS attack, we can almost guarantee that our mission critical business traffic may get through. So there's a lot of things, and of course there's encryption like IPsec and TLS that will teach all of this, but you have to be very familiar with this. Now, there's a lot that goes into data security too, and of course we teach it. Things like data classification and controlling access to data and ensuring data integrity. Think things like hashing and the various hashing algorithms. Data loss prevention, think about ways that we can do like what data loss prevention tools, things like egress monitoring on the network, for example, or for example, software that's on the servers that would disable a USB port. You know, there are some companies that will physically disable USB ports. So these are the kind of things that would go on data access controls. We would get a lot into data integrity, data encryption here, lots of cryptography or data lifecycle management. And we'll also be talking, when we deal with encryption, one of the things we like about storage encryption is the integrity from the hashing. But we'll even talk about protecting against attacks on the hashing or the cryptographic system. Of course, we'll get involved and teach you things like application security because these are the skills that you need to know wherever you're at. And these can be anything from code checks to the types of APIs that would be used. For example, REST versus SOAP, one's more secure versus the other. Other strategies to secure an API, secure coding practices, things like input validation. All this is going to be part of your security architecture that you're going to have to talk to people about. So, of course, we're going to make sure you know these and teach you. Now, you're going to need a lot of knowledge on identity and access management. Of course, we teach this, things like federated IAM and single sign-on and cloud access security brokers and context-aware identity and access management and the types of authentication mechanisms we have, whether they be tokens, whether they be smart cards, whether they be something you are, like a fingerprint, a retina scan, or an iris scan, or things like that. But we'll go through all of those. And we'll talk about the different types of authentication methods, their strengths, weaknesses, and workarounds. We'll get involved in physical security. When to use a dog, when to use a fence, when to use locks. We'll get involved in fire suppression and anything else like emergency procedures, which are part of the security architect's job. And we'll get pretty deep, probably deeper than anyone would ever want me to, on cryptography and public key cryptography and digital signatures and hashing and prevention of the hashing attacks. And then we'll get pretty involved into the NIST framework and the zero trust framework because they are there. Now, you'll also have to understand the underlying technology of the network and the data center and the cloud because you have to secure it. But don't worry, we provide you all the network, data center, and cloud architecture fundamentals that you actually need to be great at the job. So we have all of that training too. Now, certifications, there's three really good certifications that I love for architects. And because I like them so much, we teach them in this program. We teach the CISSP because that is the king and the queen of all security certifications. That's the one that matters. We teach the CCSP because that does a very good job of talking about the specific challenges in cloud security. And we also do the CISM, which is the Certified Information Security Manager. And we do this because as an architect, you have to sell to the CISO. And that certification is designed for the CISO. So it teaches you what your client's thinking of. And that's really what we want our architects to be. We really want them to be CISOs and act like CISOs because they're consulting to the CISO. So that's why we have that to make you better prepared for that. Now, let's talk about how we do our training. So we teach all those business elements. Like I said, if you're not with us, get a master's in business administration. And we will teach all of them, from whether they be the technical controls, risk management, network security, data security, application security, IAM, physical security, crypto, all of it. We'll get involved in all of it. And we'll also have brand building and getting hired phases. So the way we run our training is first we get you the technical and business competency, and then we have interview training, we have branding training, we have resume training, we even have salary negotiation training because the last step is getting hired. So we work on that too. Now we have the way this program works is we have 4 live classes per week. One live class is completely dedicated to security architecture. One live class is completely dedicated to business and leadership skills. And 2 live classes are actually dedicated towards cloud architecture. And that way we do network, data center, and cloud, and we mix you with the cloud architecture students. And we do it for a reason, because in the real world architecture environment, there's going to be an architecture team. There's going to be security architects doing security. There's going to be network architects working in the cloud. So that way we can put you in real architecture teams when we give you real architecture projects, meaning businesses that have problems to be solved for you to create the architectures, design the architectures, present them, and sell it back to us, just like you would in the real world. So 4 live classes per week live on Zoom, so you can ask questions. In addition to the live classes, there is a massive and an enormous program on cybersecurity that is on demand. Now, this portion of the program, this on-demand portion, you stay in until the day you're hired. And as we update the program, it continually gets updated for you. I want you in our program until the day you're hired. Something happens in life and you can't finish in a period of time, I don't care. I want you in the program until you're hired. So we keep that's there. We usually also have 1 day a week of office hours in case anybody gets lost and has any questions in the program. And that's another session on Zoom where you can interact with our staff just in case you get stuck. Because we don't want anybody stuck. We want everybody hired in the end. And of course, we have a global Slack community, people all over the world that are willing to work with you and help you. And guess what? We do all of this with today's pricing for less than 2 days' pay for the average graduate. So I hope you join us in our program. But no matter what you want to do, please ask your questions so we can help you.
Well, let's take a look. All right, Joshua, you are first up, my friend. Hi, Mike. It's Joshua, aka Zimcan IT. I was recently promoted to an Azure cloud consultant. Congratulations from
Good,
a
congratulations.
cloud engineer position starting in April. I'll have some exposure to HLD, LLD design, SOW, and much more strategy focus. However, there is an implementation perspective to this role. What would you say is the ideal roadmap for becoming a cloud security architect within a year? That's my ideal goal.
Okay, Joshua, I know you, and I worked with you to get your first cloud engineering job. I also remember the attitude, energy, enthusiasm, and passion you have. And if you'll recall, I always talked about how much I like that and how I saw that being an advantage to you, along with the likability that you had. So, I mean, first, Joshua, I know you. We got you a cloud engineer job. My recommendation is you take our program, and I know we'll get you there. But if you're not with us, Joshua, I would focus on the business acumen. I'd enroll in an MBA program because, Joshua, you're really smart and you've got the technical piece down. But at this point, I mean, there's still some different technical things, Joshua, that you would need versus what you're doing, but you still have a lot of the tech down. The bigger challenge is the more business piece, the sales piece, the executive presence. And I can tell you, Joshua, I had an individual, I'm going to call him O because I don't want to mention his whole name. And he came to me and he was in what you called an engineering role. And that He was doing like more sales engineering kind of stuff, but it was light on the sales, almost like a solution architect, but no, because he was touching the technology, so it was more sales engineering. And he came with me with about a $150,000 job, and about a year later, he left with a $409,000 job at Google. And the difference for him was he came to us as a really smart engineer with great skills. I mean, the guy's a rock star. But what he lacked was that polish. He lacked that executiveness. And when he picked up that polish and executiveness, the doors just opened wide open for him. So for you, that's really the same thing that I would really recommend. But the bigger question is it cloud security you wanted to do, or is it enterprise architecture that you would find more interesting? Both of them are equally good. I love both.
Another question from Joshua: is it possible to reserve a spot on the Cloud Security Architect program months in advance? For example, joining Go Cloud Careers training in April for the said security architect program.
You know, yeah, absolutely, Zim. I've had so many people buy something when we're on sale and start at 3 months, 6 months, a year later. I don't care. I'd love to work with you again. I enjoyed working with you in the first place, and love to work with you again. So yeah, that's totally fine.
Also from Zim. So since network layer security is such a huge portion of Cloud Security Architect, is the CCNA relevant for understanding the network? I have a AZ700 and Azure Focus Network certificate, which was mainly about configuration. The syllabus does not cover items such as subnetting, supernetting, VLAN, spanning tree protocol, etc.
Yeah, so for the most part, in any of those AZ or AWS certifications, I don't expect them to teach you anything about underlying technology. I mean, there's no networking in the AWS advanced networking. None. I mean, really none. There's a little bit of stuff on load balancers and DNS, but all the heavy networking is kind of absent. So here's the key, and let's talk about the CCNA. You have to understand networking to understand network security. But there's a big difference between learning how to configure a router and understanding network security. So if you don't understand what's in the IP header, for example, then you could never figure out what could be used on network security. For example, there's a type of service bit in the IP header. That type of service enables me to mark certain traffic as more important than others. So I could prioritize mission critical business traffic over worm traffic to prevent a DDoS attack, for example. I also know where the header tells me the source, the destination, and what's in the header is what typically a packet filter like an ACL or firewall would use. So you do need to understand networking. But the problem is you're not going to get it by configuring a router. So I wish I could describe it. So let's talk about what you would learn if you configured a firewall. And let's talk about why architects don't benefit from labs, Joshua, why engineers may benefit from labs, but why architects won't. So let's say I had a lab in our program on how to configure a rule in a firewall. What would I teach you how to do? How to configure a rule in a firewall. I hope that makes sense, Joshua. So now, Joshua, I want to put it in perspective. Here's what I need to consider when I am an architect considering a firewall. Okay, how does the firewall deal with unknown malware when the malware comes in? Does the firewall use signature detection, which means that it's able to detect things that happened before that it knows about? Is it receiving incoming threat feeds? Does it sandbox the code that's coming in into like a container or a virtual machine, test the code and see if the code's okay to pass? Does it use behavioral analysis on the code to determine whether it should pass? Now, if I'm an architect and I'm considering how am I going to protect against malware at the edge of my network, I need to consider that. And I need to consider the Palo Alto version versus the Fortinet version versus the Cisco version, which is better. Now, let's talk about, the IDS, IPS things. Now, how does that work in the firewall? Is it looking at heuristics like behavioral analysis? Is it based on a pattern of known attack like a signature? So these are the things that I'm concerned about. Now, I might be concerned about what's the throughput of these things and how many of these firewalls I need. And do I load share across firewalls with a network load balancer, for example? How do I stack them? What kind of CPUs do I need in my firewalls? Those are the things that I'm concerned about as an architect. And unfortunately, the CCNA is a great job of how to configure things. So you need to understand networking. Now, I can tell you this, Zim, that this book, by the way, this really old book here, this TCP/IP Volume 1, and you could see it's a pretty meaty book. Volume 1 and Volume 2, most network people I know, CCIAs, have had to read Volume 1 and Volume 2. And when you actually look in here, in this book, they get so deep, it's kind of fun if you want to get really geeky. And they show you what's in the headers of the packets and things like that. And this will give you a level of knowledge that you imagine. But for architects, what we do is conceptual. You have to be able to picture what is the impact of this thing on this system to another part of the system. We don't really learn how to do it by configuring something. I really wish we would. Joshua or Zim, did that make any sense? Feel free to come off mute.
Okay. Well, I know Zim has another question, Mike, so we'll go to that one. Since cloud security architect is more strategy focused, are there also lab components for the training with GoCloud?
So there are some things that you can do to get hands-on in the data center and private clouds and public clouds and apply some of these things. There are. But to be fair, this is not a job of labs. This is a job of planning. So, there's some parts of my training that I would say, and I'm going to ask you to unmute them because you said you had trouble with it. There's some part of the programs that I would say are necessary. The planning part, the presentation part, the learning part, all the critical stuff. But labs, if they help you feel confident about something, that's great. But like I've said, I've interviewed engineers with 30 years experience for the last 20 years, and very few have ever been able to be an architect without getting architect training. So, hi, Joshua.
Thanks so much, Mike, for your responses. Hi, Alonso. Hi, Chow. Actually, you answer all my questions whenever I show up to your sessions, and I really appreciate that. This is just a testimony to everyone else who's listening, because I did take your cloud engineering training, I think, a couple years ago, just after COVID or so. So, yes, I became a cloud engineer as a result of GoCloud's training. And yes, as of late, I've been promoted to a cloud consultant role, giving me the exposure to architects a bit closer. And they said that there's an opportunity to even get into pre-sale solutions architecture, which might be the bridge in between cloud security architecture. So, I do take your advice on board. What you say makes sense. It's been validated even by myself. And I just wanted to say we appreciate you and thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. This is a
Awesome.
day that's going to make me cry. I'm so happy. Yesterday was the 30th anniversary of the day I met my wife. Today, two students popped in that are now working because I mean, I know what it was like for me, and that's why I do what I do. We basically charge our costs. I remember how hard it was for me to leave medicine for tech because every course I took was a bunch of skills that employers didn't care about,
Right.
and it was like so that's why I do what I do. But thank you, Joshua.
Man, what
Yeah,
a
you're welcome.
series of endorsements today. We appreciate you, Joshua and Mike. That says a lot. When a lot of people, some people have asked, well, why don't we see you all, with your ratings and everything else? But I'm like, you all have to understand that what we do here far, yeah, just transcends any of these checklists that people have out here. You have a great experience. You have a learning experience. You have a environment and a community that really cares not only about your education, but the future of your career. So when we hear this, we feel really good about it and we're thankful. Ahmed, Mike. Okay, so Ahmed is asking, what about existing students for the AI program? I guess I'm thinking if he wants to add on or maybe transfer out of
Okay.
one to the other. But Ahmed, I don't want to speak for you. If you want to come off mute, we're happy to have you.
Is Ahmed here?
And also, if anyone has any questions, just look below to the react button, pick raise your hand, and we definitely will respond to you.
Oh, I think this is Ahmed.
Okay.
I'm mute.
Hi, Mike. Do you hear
Hi,
me?
Ahmed. How are you?
I'm good. What about you?
Wonderful.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, my questions. I'm a student in enterprise architect program, and if I want to leverage this security architect, it will be the same live class, or there is be extra live class.
What would happen is it's going to be one extra live class for you.
Okay.
that's going to be dedicated to the security, and there'll be additional online things that are added to your student dashboard.
Okay,
There
great.
is an option for you to add on because you don't need to buy the entire program if you're already an internal student, and it's available at a substantial discount because you're not buying the other training because it's already part of it. So if you send an email to info@GoCloudCareers, Chris can point you to the link of exactly where that is if that's a desire for you.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you
Shukran.
so much.
Olu, please.
Honestly, I don't have any questions. I'm just excited and I'm looking forward to this class starting on Monday because I think, all the skill sets that you mentioned, I think that I have, and it was like I'm building, but I'm just really pumped to start to get this thing on the road on Monday and get that amazing, amazing, amazing security architect job that I've been bugging Alonso about on LinkedIn and Mike on LinkedIn.
We've had some
Oh,
great
but I can't
conversations
wait
on
till you
this
get it.
topic.
This is one of my favorite things. You know, it's funny. I have another person that's joining us that's an IAM architect, and that's all he's done is IAM for 20 years. And I called him. I'm like, I have a security architect. And he's like, finally, Mike. He's like, I was waiting for you to do this. And I'm like, could you teach IAM? Because I teach them a lot of our classes. I really do. Like if there's 4 classes a week, I probably teach 3 of them because I just love to teach so much. But every once in a while, there's someone that knows something so well that I just love to bring in, and I'm really excited. So, oh, I can't wait to work with you.
Let's see. It's from Samuel Mike. Question: does a security architect need to know the many different security products out there? There seems to be a lot to learn.
So, what a great question. So, the first thing you need to understand is the vendors work for us. So what do I mean by that? So there's going to be 2 places that you're going to work. You could be working, and I've trained students that work at, say, I had somebody used to work, somebody, I trained somebody, she was Cameroonian, she went over to Palo Alto Networks. I trained a guy from Palm Beach Gardens who first went over to, I trained him and he went to Cisco. After Cisco, he went to Zscaler and then he went to Netspoke, for example. I trained Delroy and he went to CDW. That was his first tech job after being an emergency medical technician. So, what was I talking about again, Alonzo? I
Oh,
actually
we're
forget.
talking about all these different security vendors out here.
Oh, okay. So, and the key, so the reason I say this is if you're at Zscaler, and you're a solutions architect, like a security solutions architect at Zscaler, you have to know Zscaler stuff in and out. Now, if you're a security architect for an enterprise, for example, and in so if you're a security architect for an enterprise, you're going to have to evaluate all the technology products that are going to come in for your enterprise, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick up the phone and call my account manager for Checkpoint because they make some really good firewalls. Fortinet, Cisco, Zscaler. I'm going to call my favorite security vendors and they're going to bring in their solution. And guess what? I might have their architects and say, prove it to me. So what'll happen is the architects will create a proof of concept team. They'll bring in some engineers. The engineers will do whatever test plans that we want to do, and they'll give us all this information. It'll be just free, part of the sales process. So you have to understand the types of product categories that exist. You have to understand what product types do what. Where would you put a firewall? Where would you put an IDS IPS system? Where would you put your data loss prevention system? If you put your firewall outside the router, what do you gain and what do you lose? If you put it inside the router, what do you lose? Because there's always a trade-off. These kind of things you'll have to understand. What kind of IAM strategies could I do? Should I use context aware, not context aware? This kind of stuff? Yeah, you need to know. But unless you work for the vendor, you're not going to be able to understand all of a vendor's products because you're going to have a 50 or 100 of them to actually work with. So don't worry about it. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Hope I answered the question there.
Jacob is asking, are the live classes recorded and available for replay?
Absolutely. The live classes are always recorded and available for replay. You know, some people just work full time. For example, I had a student, he was 24-year-old Ivan Tamba. Love this kid. And he actually was working as a waiter full time. And he was also a student at Georgia Tech full time. And he decided to take my course as well. So what happened is Ivan Tamba just watched the recordings of the previous classes on his 90-minute bus ride back and forth between his house and Georgia Tech. And he had like 3 hours of commute time. So he just literally watched our classes. He'd pop into class periodically and say, "Hey, everybody, I got a question on this." We'd answer his question and he'd go back to do it. And then he went to AWS as his first tech job as a solutions architect. So, we're going to record every class. If you can come to part of a class, great. If you can come to all of a class, great. If you can come to none of the classes, well, you can still do the work. You still turn in your homework. We're still going to give you feedback on your work, and we're going to do anything we can to make you successful. So I hope I answered that question.
Wasim, I am one of your followers on YouTube, and I like the session so far. Will there be similar sessions in the future for other career tracks like network architects?
So I can tell you that right now we do enterprise architecture, we do security architecture, we do cloud architecture, AI architecture, and solutions architecture. I might potentially be thinking about creating something. And if I did, it would probably have the world's greatest networking people known to man in it. People that have CCIE numbers of five. Mine would be the highest CCIE number. Mine is 7417. So it would be with people that have CCIE numbers of, let's say, 3,000 or less, and
And
CCDE numbers, and maybe even CCARs.
and considering this is Mike's bread and butter, so this will be the preeminent best, and I will put that out there, the best networking architecture development program the world has ever seen. So just keep looking. We'll leave it at that.
It's
So
my plan. The question is time, but it is my plan because I have limited time. But if I could do it, I would love to really put together a really good networking program. One of the first CCIEs was a principal architect 25 years ago. That was my first principal network architect job, and I love network architecture.
let's take a break from the line of questioning, and we would love to have Alusa love ask a question for us. So join us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I listened to the way you explain the security um, architect role.
Hey guys, I'll just let you know that Gary is not
Sorry, sorry, let me walk away. I'm at work.
I understand.
So,
We
so
understand.
at the moment, I'm currently working on my doctorate program in IT
Good.
security, hoping that I'll be running up anytime soon by December. But in the
Okay.
meantime, I joined the solution architecture class,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I've not been having enough time to go through that. So in my current position, I work as information system security officer, but
Okay.
I want to work it in the way that by the time I'm done or towards the end of my class, I want to work in, high position, just like the way you demonstrate it.
Okay.
Now, I'm a bit confused where to dwell. Is on solution architect or security architect? Because
Okay.
someone just reached out to me today regarding security architect. And
Mhm.
in the requirement, he was talking about me being able to work with safe architect, network security, PC and SES wireless, IAM or ADM, and using API management, cloud security, understanding routers, switches, endpoint
Yes.
security,
Hmm.
device management, cloud management, gateway, and patching mobility. So in your program, which one of them can actually address all these requirements, or is it
All
that
of all of that is in our security architect development program. 100% of it. So when I was referring to network security, I was talking about the routers, the switches, the firewalls, the IDS, IPS systems, and whether it was controlling access with a packet filter, whether it was micro segmenting the network so certain users couldn't talk to each other, whether we're protecting an API by limiting the traffic that can go to the API, it's all network security. So yeah, these are minimum sets of knowledge. And I've worked with a couple of people that have PhDs in cybersecurity that we're trying to transition into these cybersecurity careers. And the way I can describe it is the way a PhD is done in advanced education, what we do is we become an expert on something very, very, very small. So we do a large amount of research on some very, very small area.
Yeah.
Architecture is the exact opposite of that. So your training is exactly the opposite way you want to go. I've trained many PhDs to become architects, but here's the thing. So instead of what you determine, I might ask you things like, if an organization would have a weighted average cost of capital of 7%, how would you leverage that kind of information to think whether your security or infrastructure should be in a data center versus a public cloud? That is an architect thing. And that means I need you to be able to calculate a payment, to be able to look at the capital expenditure versus the operational expenditure in organization's capital structure. If you don't have that, you're going to either have to get it from an MBA or people like us. If I were to ask you, how would you design the demilitarized zone for your web application that is going to be for a bank that's going to serve 4 million users per day, would you know how to design it? And it's okay if you don't. What I was trying to show you is the difference between a very focused education. And believe me, I respect the education you have. I did 2 master's degrees. I started to do a doctorate. And when they started to tell me about the research that I had to do, I said, I really respect these people, but this is not for me. So what we would have to do is we'd have to train you. We would have to teach you the underlying technology. You'd have to understand that compute. You'd have to understand the storage. You'd have to understand the databases. You'd have to understand how these applications are designed. You have to understand the types of APIs. You have to understand the types of coding practices people do and the types of security you can implement. That's what it's going to take to become an architect. Now, I can tell you the difference between solution versions of a security architect and a pure security architect, if that helps you. The solution architect is always the least respected, lowest paying of all the architect jobs. And here's the reason why. The solution architect works for one vendor and designs, presents, and sells the single vendor stuff. So that's like a physician that went to medical school and says, I only know how to use Pfizer medications. And I only prescribe Pfizer medications. So my patients have access to all 50. By comparison, the security architect, which is focused on everything they can do for their client. So if the security architect was a physician, they'd have access to every medication produced by every medical pharmaceutical company in the world, as well as all the surgical techniques that are available, and they could choose the best for their client. Does that explain the difference between the solution architecture versus the security architecture?
Yeah, that's very informative. So, being part of one of your programs, and I wish to join the security, what will be my discount? What should I do?
Send an email to info@gocloudcareers.net.
Can you
And
put
if
it
you're
in the
already,
chat?
what's that? Yeah,
Info.
I'm gonna have, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I'll have Chal put that in the chat because if you're already a student, there's certain things you wouldn't need to do again. But this would be very focused training. I actually believe with with the PhD, the CISSP, the CCSP, and the CISM, and then learning security architecture, I think where you'll find yourself will be really impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, because I work with the Department of Defense, so
Okay.
I use tools like SIG, SCAP, all of that to add in system and to search for vulnerability, familiar with Tenable, vulnerability tools, Wireshark, all of that. But I want to solidify it in a way that make me look presentable, when I'll be able to negotiate for better price, salary. I'll be listening to you, watching the video, YouTube. I know that you are loaded with good stuff.
Thank you. It's my life's work. I love it.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Send that message to Chris. Chal just put it in the email address. We'll get you taken care of.
All right. Thanks.
All right. The next question is going to be back to Zip. since cloud security architecture is more, I think we already went through this. This is like
We addressed that one.
okay, Moses, will I be able to watch this session again?
Yes. We'll email this session to you.
Kanoi, do I have to join the live classes in the program because I saw the schedule on your site? I won't be able to join because of my job.
Well, if you can't join the live classes, you'll still be fine by watching the class recordings. If there's a day or time where you get stuck, maybe you pop in for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, ask a question for something like that. Or maybe there's a day that we do interviews. And maybe you just try to drop in for 30 minutes and you tell us you can come in for 15 minutes and we prioritize you to go first or second. There's lots of flexibility in the way we teach our classes, and 80% of our students work full time. All I care is that you're successful. It would probably be quicker if you were in the classes. And the reason I say your time would be quicker in the classes is in the class, I'll be able to coach you live. For example, if you're giving a presentation, I'll be able to coach you. Whereas if you watch the other things, you'll be able to see the other people that will be coached, but you'll still have opportunities to turn in presentations and have bits of them coached as well. It just won't be as much in the live classes. But I have lots of students that are highly successful not going to the live classes. But if you get stuck, it's always an option to come to one of the live classes. Of course, you can also use Slack. You can also come to one of the many office hour sessions or do or things as well. So I kind of hope that helps. And I
Hey,
and
got something else, Mike?
nope. I think I was just thinking my brain was going on to three different questions ahead that I thought I saw.
Okay. Let's go to Christopher Mike. Hi, Mike. I'm a system/networking administrator. I want to move to security architecture. What's the best path?
Well, the best path is not asking what you've done in your life. The best path is determining what your baseline is and determining the skills that you have or don't have, and then determining the skills that you actually need. So, can you come off mute? I mean, I can pretty much tell you what you'll probably need to do from experience working with systems administrators with 20 years experience, but you might be in a different position and I'd rather ask you. So can you come off mute?
Well, if you'd like to speak with us at a later date, I'm going to add, an opportunity for you to schedule a call with
Oh,
us. Is that you?
somebody just unmuted. Maybe that's
Yes,
what?
that's me.
Hey,
Yeah,
okay.
so Mike,
Yes.
the issue is that as an working as a system administrator and then as a networking administrator is not really as an easy job, but I want to move on to the solutions architect in this. But the whole problem is there's a dilemma. I wanted to either maybe um, do my CISSP or maybe go on to maybe perform a different kind of certification. But the whole issue is that I'm just lost and I need a path that would suit that path I want to take.
So the key is we have to baseline you. The CISSP probably won't get you there on its own. And the only people that teach a CISSP class that's worthwhile are about $5,000 for the week. And I don't want to tell you to do that. GUIAC actually has a very good 1 week security training that's about $7,000, but it's only 1 week's worth, and it's not going to be enough. So the question is, let me ask you some basic types of security and networking things, because you said you were an engineer. Let me see where your knowledge is. Maybe you've picked up some of the architectural principles along the way. And if you have, then I'll tell you what you need to learn. If you're in a position where you know how to do a lot of things, which is usually what I see, but you don't have the knowledge of how the stuff works or how it fits together, I'll recommend architecture training. So are you ready for a couple of questions?
Sure.
I know a lot of systems administrators work with identity and access management. So I'm going to start my first one in the world that you'd probably be closest with. Could you talk to me about the difference between context-aware identity and access management versus traditional identity and access management, and how context-aware identity and access management might enhance my security posture?
Yeah. Mike, that's very too far. At the moment, I'm even commuting, so and to be sincere, it's really I'm a bit confused as you are talking.
And the reason I'm saying this is you've done a lot of how-to work, and that's great. And I know as a systems administrator, you've added users, you've added to groups, and you've done some of that from an IAM perspective. I know you have. But my point was, how to design it and the things that you think about in design. For example, with context aware IAM, I can think about where the user is. So if Alonso's supposed to be at his home to use the systems and he logs in with the username and a passphrase at home, but all of a sudden Alonso tries to log in at a different IP address, my systems can say, Alonso, you're not allowed in, or they can ask, say, maybe username and password, and now I need a token, Alonso. Or with context aware, where what is really going on is it's tracking where people are, it's tracking the time of day, or people trying to log in when they're not supposed to log in. So by looking at things more than username and password to determine who the users are, determining what they're allowed to do and when they're allowed to do it and where they're allowed to do it from, you can reduce the risk profile. And the reason I gave you that example is that's the architect version versus the user that does the work, the labs, the how-to. You're just going to need some architecture training. And truth be told, in about 8 to 12 months with good architecture training, as long as you put the effort in, you'll find yourself in a good security architect job. But it's not reasonable to try and teach yourself how to become an architect. I'll tell you which careers you can learn how to do on your own. You can learn how to be a systems administrator or a network admin because you just get a router, you get a Linux machine, you got a Windows machine, you configure it until you figure out how to do stuff. That you can do. What you can't do is figure out how to fly an airplane on your own. You can't figure out how to do surgery or practice medicine on your own. You can't practice law without being taught how to do it. And truthfully, architecture, there's principles in designing things. How do you design? Where do you design? Where do you design for? And that has to be taught because none of us are known how to do it. Nobody knows how to plan $1 billion technology strategy. I didn't. And I didn't get it from any engineering training I did. I learned it in business. So that would be what I would tell you to do. And you'll get there. But you'll get there. You're just going to need a little training. Nobody was born knowing how to do any of these things. But I can tell you, you take what you have, which is great. It's still engineering experience and administration experience. Learn a new set of skills and you'll go far.
Hey, Mike, let's see. Back to Zim. To showcase experience in cloud security architect and build a public brand, is it a good idea to start blogging on topics that compare different firewall solutions? For example, a blog comparing a FortiGate firewall to an Azure firewall, discussing feature sets, trade-offs, and applicable use cases.
I wouldn't, because then you're going to be seen as a product evaluator. Now, Zim, if you could talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the zero trust strategy versus the strengths and weaknesses of a defense in depth strategy, and why zero trust and defense in depth should be combined versus either or, now that would be a good way to show that you're a security architect. If you could talk about if you wrote something on the risk of using untrusted new uh, AI systems that no one knows a lot about, that could also be something to talk about. When is the innovation and when is the cost worth the risk? You could also talk about that. But you got to bring it up to a higher level. When dealing with new remote access users, what happens when you have a couple 100,000 remote access users? What are your options? VPN concentrators, what are your strengths and weaknesses of this? IPsec type tunnels, TLS based tunnels, a SASE type environment. So Joshua, that would be the kind of thing. What you're trying to show is you're a strategist, that you see the big picture, you understand the challenges that need to be solved, and then that's what you're trying to talk about. Does that make sense, Joshua?
And if you can't respond, you can always add your comments in the section as well. Thanks, Joshua. Okay, Mike, on to the next one, and that's going to be from Yasar. How long will it take for a student to complete your security architect program? Also, how many hours will a student have to spend each day to complete the development program?
Okay, so Here's the reality. I'm going to give you both sides of it. My wife can read 1,000 pages a day and remember 100% of it. She can also tell me what I ate back in August 18th of 1996 for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because she was with me that whole day, and she can do it. So for her, all she'd have to do is watch each video once, and instantly it's in her head. Now, that's not me. So for me, it might take a little longer. So some of it is going to be based upon how fast you learn. And the rest of it's going to be based in how good or deficient you are with certain things and how quickly you learn them. But having said that, I'd say 8 to 12 months is pretty normal from what we've seen of students that put in, 10 to 20 hours a week to get through the program in about 8 to 12 months. And by 8 to 12 months, I mean hired. Now, I do have students that attend a class, they come back 3 months later, they attend a couple more classes, they come back 3 months later. They're going to take a lot more time. But we'll let you stay in all the online components until you're hired. But I would say 8 to 12 months on average.
From Kanoy, do I have to know any of the vendor specific technology? I think this is a repeat from another question.
Yeah, and it isn't. So all in all, no and yes. So it's predominantly no. Nobody's going to expect you to know every other vendor's technology. It's not going to be possible. Now, you will remember certain companies like Cisco provides network security and SIEM systems, for example, which means, okay, Cisco's got some things like firewalls and Cisco has things like security event monitoring. You might also note that Palo Alto also has some of these things and Fortinet has a lot of these things. So you might know who your main players are and you'll know who they are and you'll know what their main product set is. But no, anytime you've got an architecture, these people have 1,000,001 products. To put it into context how impossible it is, I worked for Cisco. And I remember there was a silly sales engineer that was like, I got to know every product set we have. And he'd been there for 3 years. Nobody ever promoted him. This guy was always sweating. He was like, what are you, crazy? And I'd got there in a bit of months. I'm like, why are you going to try and do this? There's a technical marketing engineer that's an expert on all these things. Go call that department and get somebody to talk to you and figure it out for you. And they went, huh? And I said, what do you mean? You didn't know? And I said, no, each product has a product manager and a team of engineers that are there to help you on these products. Don't try to show up at the customer, act like you know something about a product that you don't. Bring the expert with you and show that you're a leader and you can bring the expert in. Person started doing that and poof, they moved up into management fairly quickly. But the point is we have to understand that Cisco makes a firewall, and we have to understand the kinds of firewalls they have. But when we need them, we're going to call Cisco in. Now, if you worked for Cisco, that's another story. If you worked at Cisco and you were in the security division, not me, an enterprise architect that would have to deal with every single thing, you would have to know the security products in your division. And guess what? It's probably less than 10 products anyway. So it wouldn't be that hard to do, and that would be your primary job. But if you're working as a security architect, no, that's not the thing. You're going to have to be dealing with so many vendors, and you can't remember which vendor does what well. These are good questions.
They are, and they're very unique, and I think they're really in-depth questions. Yasara is asking, please let me know what the live class schedule start time is.
So in Eastern time, the Tuesday class is 10 to 12 in the morning, a.m. The Thursday class is 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. The Friday class is 1 to 3 p.m. And Chal, do you know the time on Monday of the security architect class? And if so, could you either come off mute or put it in the chat box?
This is the information that we have on the website, Mike.
Okay, I think the other classes, the security architect class, is focused on Monday. Chris is actually putting out the latest schedule. Since Chris is the planner of making sure that we all go where we need, when we're supposed to be, all the systems do what they're supposed to be.
Let's see.
And he's out sick right now.
From D, Mike, they're asking, is the curriculum available for review?
Yes, it's directly available on our website at a high level. I understand we can't list everything at that high level, but at a high level review, you'll see it's enormously comprehensive. Otherwise, but it would be if we listed everything, it'd be 40 and 50 pages or more.
Yeah. Let's see what else we have, Mike. From Ragu. Hi, Mike. I've been preparing for the CISM certification since you gave me a leg up with the boot camp a couple of weeks ago. I see that there's a requirement to have at least 5 years of relevant professional experience, including 3 years of management experience. However, I have no direct cybersecurity experience other than being in software application support for 16 years and being in management for 3 years. How would I translate my prior experience into experience requirement for these certs? If I don't fulfill the 5 year requirement, would I still be a CISM certified just by passing the certification?
Okay, so the three biggest certifications have these silly, ridiculous rule requirements. You need 5 years experience. Guess what? You don't. You could go take these things. So Alonzo's going to be my hiring manager for a minute. And the reason I like to give these three certifications to people that are never worked in tech before. So here's what happens. So now first I'm going to have, first I'll give you two, I'll give you the certifications that Alonzo and react to it. I have an AWS Advanced Security, the Google Security, and a CompTIA Security Plus. All right. Now, well, because that's what people do that are worried about that nonsense. Alonzo, thank you for having me. Regarding these certifications, the CISSP, the CISM, the CCSP, I've taken them and I've passed them. The reason it says associate status here is because I haven't had 5 years experience. Apparently, the people that these organizations thought it's so hard to pass these exams that you need 5 years experience. So I said I would use that as my baseline. That would be my introduction. So I passed all of them. And if you need to have 5 years experience to pass them, that's my starting point. Imagine where I'm going to be in a year from now. So I want to show that you're the super smart person that doesn't have to have 5 years experience to pass it. That's what I did on my CISSP. In fact, I remember when I had interviewed, when I was telling my company, I'm going to become a CCIE. And they laughed at me. They're like, Mike, you need 10, 15 years experience. Even then, you're going to have to pass it, fail it 4 to 6 times. So 9 months later, I passed it. And then when I passed it, you know what I used in my things? Everybody I went to was like, I just started in networking last year. And they said, you're a CCA. Oh, wow, you must be smart. And that's how I actually built it. So never be able to show your intelligence, your fungibility, your ability to adapt. Because what do I really want? I want someone that can do the job. I want someone that's energetic. I want someone that's enthusiastic. I want someone that's passionate about the work. I want someone that's willing to go above and beyond. And I want somebody smart. Prove to them you're smart. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so if you all have any questions, we're all caught up so far, but we want to make sure that everyone's questions, hopes, possibilities, thoughts, or anything else, if you have anything or any hesitations about who we are as an organization, the leadership of Michael Gibbs, the value of Go Cloud Careers, and all of our development programs that we can bring to bear to get you into whatever desired architectural career that you want, give us a call, give us an email. Feel free to reach out to us on Calendly, schedule an appointment with myself or one of the Go Cloud Careers teams, and we'll be happy to speak with you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
There's another question from Joshua. Alonzo, you see that? I just put it on the list.
Okay, let's take a look, and I believe Mike Abraham has a question for me as well. Joshua, Zim, would you recommend any specific cloud security or general security focused books, please? I also have added the TCP IP volumes 1, 2, and 3 to my reading list for networking.
There's not a lot of good stuff on cloud security. So here's the good news. If you truly understand security, real security, and you understand what cloud computing is, it's a rented network in a data center. You understand that real security is cloud security. It's just that you can't do as much of it on the cloud. You have less options on the cloud. You have more attack vectors on the cloud. And I'll show you what I mean by that. If you want, we can have a little fun with it architecturally for a minute. And what was the question again, Alonzo? as we all know.
Just making sure that if there are any security, cloud security or security related resources, let me know, let us know, or let him know.
Yeah, so I know a lot of great security resources, but there's almost nothing good in the cloud. The best thing you're going to find on the cloud that's dedicated to cloud stuff is Mike Chappelle's book. That would be the CISM. And because the reason so many people don't understand cloud security is they don't understand cloud computing. All cloud computing is renting space in someone's network in a data center. But here's your primary difference. If this is a data center, realistically speaking, we typically have, and here's your internet. Let's just assume this is your internet. Behind your internet, you're going to have a bunch of firewalls, what have you. But just for argument's sake, I'm just going to make it look like it's one firewall, and this would be sufficient. It wouldn't in most cases, but let's just pretend it would be. So in a normal environment, I'm going to create what's called a demilitarized zone over here. And this could be my web DMZ. And it's outside my environment. And the only thing that I would let over here would be, for example, TCP port 443 for the TLS that would be going to the website. And this is outside. So the point is, in this environment, we've got users in the data center. They'll be able to go out to the internet. Oops, hold on, bear with me. In a traditional environment, users can go out to the internet, and their internet traffic is allowed to come back because the firewall is keeping track of what's going on. But there's no ingress. There's no way you can get in this network here because your web servers are outside the network. This is standard security architecture. Now, in the cloud, I want you to realize this. Where's the cloud's boundaries? So first, so the first thing you have to realize, where's the cloud? So if you've got a VPC, for example, and of course we teach all of this, if here's your internet gateway, and your internet gateway is taking let's say here's an internet gateway, and here's your firewall, and here's your internet. You can put your firewall before or after it. And here's your internet, and now you got and here's your web servers. If you have other servers that are sitting inside this, say HR or finance servers, literally speaking, if anybody manages to get into here anyway, they're now in all your corporate private systems. So what happens is we lose these hard boundaries in the cloud, which makes it much harder to secure. We have so much network security we can do here, and we can't do anything in the cloud. So a lot of what we're going to be doing in cloud computing is teaching you the workarounds to make it more secure. So if here we might need to do more identity and access management, which might help us, which is why we're migrating more towards zero trust. Or what we might do is we might segment our environment. For example, if we can't do a true demilitarized zone, maybe we create two different VPCs. And you'll see these are all workarounds. So what we could do is we could have a web VPC, and then we could have another VPC that has our HR and finance stuff. And by doing so, we can segment them. Now, it's not going to be the same level of segmentation that we actually had in our data center, but it's getting close. And then if we don't let these two VPC peer with each other and there's no communication between them, then we don't have any risks of this getting hacked into this. So we're going to have to get involved in a lot of network security, a lot of creativity, and a lot of workarounds in the cloud. Because all the best security tools in the world don't have the same security strategies and boundaries. The other reason the cloud's a bigger risk is who are you going to hack? Do you want to hack, Cindy the cat's tuna shop? Or do you want to hack the cloud provider, which is a bigger high-value target?
All right. Next is going to be from Travis Whitfield. How do new grad salaries compare to experienced people? And if you want me to pull up Glassdoor's security architect link, I have that for you as well.
Yeah, so it's less about your experience and it's more about what you can do for them. If I've got somebody with 20 years experience that's a complete and total idiot, I don't care that they have 20 years experience. What if I have a 14-year-old that can break in into the hack into the Pentagon? That that's someone I care about. That's someone that's good. So, realistically speaking, I mean, I care about competency more than experience. Having said that, what really determines your architect salary is how good you are, how polished you are, how much of an executive you are. The difference between an $800,000 architect and a $200,000 architect is more business acumen, more polish, and more C-suite abilities. I will tell you from experience, most of the architects that we typically see getting their first position are between 150 and 170, 200 for their first architect job. And I'm typically dealing with people with more seniority. They're getting 300, even 400, but or like high 280, high 250 to 350, some in 400 for people with good experience. But again, a lot of that's going to be based on how polished they are. It has a lot to do with how well they communicate. And if you don't realize why, and it sounds crazy that we're so focused on polish, I'd like you to think about it this way. I work on billion-dollar architectures. Now, the difference between me and another security architect that's equally good from a tech perspective, or potentially even better, is I know how to communicate with the C-suite. I can align the people, the processes, and technologies. I know where the levers are to change things, for example. I know how to optimize business resources, and I can go to those executives, convince them to invest that $1 billion in the technology, and they'll do it, and they'll get a $3 billion return. So that's going to determine your salary. It's how much business acumen you have, how soft your touch can be, what a good leader you're going to be. So I don't know your background, and you're more than welcome to come off mute if you have some questions, but and we'd be happy to speak to you, but you'll typically do very well if you can do that.
So feel free. Wait for a couple of minutes, seconds, and if not, then you can always refer back to our link about scheduling a video call with us or attend another webinar in the future.
Oh,
Okay,
this is
go ahead, Mike.
let me get to Kenoise Miller. So I'm going to sound near and dear to my heart.
Oh,
You're a
okay.
home health aide, and thank you for your service. It's a very tough job, and you desperately want a career. You moved to the U.S. 5 years ago from Jamaica. What a wonderful place. And you've always loved technology. You even built your own PC the first couple of times. You've done a certificate from Google, and now you're preparing for the AZ 500. There's so much out there about landing a role in tech, and you just need something. It's funny. So, so this morning when I woke up and I had my turmeric tea and I had my eggs and my Bammy, which yes, I soaked in coconut milk, and then after that everything was irie. Then more normal would start. So I have a full Jamaican kitchen in my house, and I'm literally not joking. And people come because I have so many Jamaican friends where I live in Port St. Lucie now. But neither here nor there. The point is you're going to be fine. Here's where people go wrong. 90% of the content that's out there is by people that have never had a tech job. There is literally someone that has a cloud computing channel that has 170,000 followers, and she was an intern and couldn't complete her internship because she didn't graduate her internship, and now she's providing advice. Now, I promise you, every advice that person had is probably going to be wrong because they don't even know what they don't know. And then apparently people think that they're going to go out there and provide advice about a job they've never had. And that's 80% that's out there. So, Kanoa, you can do any job you want. I don't care which one you want. I promise you, you can get there. If you want to come off mute and tell me the job you want, I'll help you get there. If you want to be an architect, I'd love you to take our program. We'll do everything we can to help you get that architect job. And it is guided, it is mentored. You have a career plan. Our students, our staff will, look at your career plan, tune your career plan. You'll be coming to class and we'll be making better. And I'm happy to do that. But if there's something else you want to do, we can talk about that too. And I'm happy to help you either way.
Okay. Let's see. This is from Mike Abraham. I'm going to move to Florida with my wife sometime next year as she is a U.S. citizen. I'm UK born, but what I want to know is with security being very much focused on U.S. citizen or U.S. government clearance to obtain a role, will I need to swap to a cloud or solutions architect when I move over, or do you know if it will be okay to be getting a security architect role on my green card?
Okay, so Michael, you're coming from England. Your situation is the easiest thing in the world. Now, if you're like my family that's coming from Greece, oh, that's a big challenge. In fact, only the rich relatives that we had were even allowed to come to America for my wedding right now. So, that's an issue. But from England, you're coming from a very strong U.S. ally. I don't think you have anything to worry about. Now, here's the thing, Michael. You're probably going to get jobs that are going to pay you a lot better and offer far more career options outside of the U.S. government in the private sector. And you could easily do that. And none of them require security clearance for the most part. I've never had security clearance, and I've designed systems for the world's largest healthcare organizations. I've designed systems for the world's largest banks. I have been fingerprinted to make sure that I didn't have a criminal background. I have been drug tested, but no, I never needed a security clearance because I didn't work with the government. My preference was to work for banks that had an unlimited amount of money to spend. My preference was to work for the biggest enterprises that had an unlimited amount of money to spend. I'm happy to go to Dubai to go design some kind of solution and come back. For me, that was more fun than trying to do it for the government. I respect people that work for the government. It's a needed job, but that. But no, you're not going to have any problem here. Now, I will tell you, Michael, and I'd love to see you in Florida. In fact, we were going to talk about it, so make sure you join me for dinner or whatever. You'll typically have more options in, say, Raleigh, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, Austin, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia than you do in Florida. We still have plenty of opportunities in Florida. We really do. But those cities that I mentioned to you are big clusters where there's just a million and one high-paying jobs and they can never find anybody. Plenty of jobs in Florida. There's more people coming to Florida than you can think about. And I can't even drive down the street in Florida anymore. It's getting so bad. And the jobs are coming with it. But still, plenty of jobs in Florida.
Move over. Okay, I think Olu has a question, and I guess he wants to be a principal security architect at Microsoft.
Sounds like a really great job to me. There are some companies that are just really good to work for. Microsoft is one of them. IBM was one of them. Cisco was one of them. EMC was one of them. Places where people go, and if they're good, the company just keeps them forever. And they just grow and they get treated well and they get respected well. I think that would be a great place for you. Pays really good at Microsoft as principal security architect. It's around it's a 372. I think 378 is about average, with a pretty good range to go up. We're down a little bit. 300 to say 500 is the typical range, but great place to work. We trained Balwinder. She went from stay-at-home mom to cloud solutions architect over there. It was fun to work with.
Let's see.
So I'm going to, Ernest, so how often do we organize a security architect program? We do not do batches.
Nope.
I will never do batches. So there are organizations, Ernest, that basically do batches. And here's what a batch is. Batch is, okay, February 15th, 50 people come in. 4 months have passed, get out of here. Why do you have to, why 4 months, get out of here? Because you passed your 16 weeks. Now, at the end of that 16 weeks, the person's not going to be hired. And then as that person's waiting to get hired over the next 6 months, that person is going to be losing their skills. And if they don't get hired in 6 months, they're never going to get hired. That's what our competition does, and I would never do that. Here's the second problem with batches. The problem with batches is everybody goes to the batch at the same time, and guess what? Nobody knows anything in the beginning. Now, who are you going to learn from? The person that also doesn't know something? Now, let's talk about the way the best educational programs are run. If you for physicians, they do an internship and residency mixed with people of all areas of expertise. When we train warfighters, when we train martial artists, and we train people to be great, we have white belts, black belts, red belts, yellow belts, all in the same class. And the reason we do this is when somebody's lost, the black belt or brown belt can now show the people that are a little stuck and a little new. And that way they practice perfectly instead of practicing incorrectly and developing bad habits. So I take students whenever they join us. The online portion is completely self-paced, Students stay with us until they are hired. And what we do is we repeat the online classes, the live classes periodically. So no matter when somebody joins, they will always get everything. And the online piece is self-paced. And by doing it this way, we can keep people in the program till they're hired. And I'll have people in the program that are ready to get hired a month from now. And guess what? They'll be helping the junior people. And I've got other people that are brand new and they'll watch and observe and learn. So we build architecture teams and we do it exactly the way we would in the real world.
All right, from Wasim. 2 questions, please. One, is the architect program geared towards working at vendors, or can they be applied for positions with VARs? And I'll share the second question later.
Our students work everywhere. So many students work at JP Morgan Chase. We have Southern New Hampshire University, Microsoft, ABSA Group, AWS, Praviti, Google, Archetype, CDW, which is a reseller, Our Electronics, Calian, another value-added reseller, Deloitte, NatWest, Calian, MUFG, Bell Media, PNC Bank, DTCC, AmeriHealth, TELUS, the Allegis Group, LeaseWeb, Credera, Nimbus, North Highlands, Cirrus Computer Solutions, Optiv, uh, Palo Alto, Cisco, Fortinet. I'm sorry, no, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think I'm not sure if we did Fortinet. I'm pretty sure we have. And what do you call it? I know some of the people I've provided training for ancillarily were also at Checkpoint as well. Pretty much everywhere. And because we give you the skills to work for a vendor, work for a value-added reseller, or work for the end customer. I just care that you're hired, and I want to make sure you have every skill you need. Now, the second question is, do we have an opportunity to work with students in the European market? I work with students in every country known to man. I've found people jobs in South Africa. I've found people jobs in New Zealand. I've found people jobs in Australia. I've gotten people jobs in Prague, in Germany, in Spain, in England, in Belgium, in every part of the world you can think of.
Travis is coming from a medical background and has zero tech experience. Are there other students like me?
Travis, what's your medical background? Can you come off mute? Because I can tell you what my background is, and I can tell you why our medical people usually do best.
Hello.
Hello, Travis.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your background?
I'm what you call a surgical tech or surgical assistant.
Like an RN first assistant kind of thing, where you're in the operating room?
Like an actual surgical tech, surgical assistant.
Okay.
First assist.
So here's the thing. In that job, do you do any assessment of the patient ahead of time?
Not in a technical sense. Not like that's not my job. That's what a nurse does.
Okay. So the people that I typically deal with, and you may actually be slightly in a different perspective, though I'm sure you'll do fine. The healthcare people and the teachers and the sales reps are the first people to be hired. And here's the reason. The sales reps, the teachers, the nurses, they're used to communicating with people. They're used to making a connection with people, and they're typically fairly emotionally intelligent people in these roles. Now, because the architect doesn't touch the technology and the architect has to learn the big picture, we're typically good from a medical person. My background is I was a paramedic. Well, I was a paramedic firefighter, but I'm so bad with tools, they just made me the Band-Aid pusher. So I was a paramedic. And then after a paramedic, I was an RN. And then after I was an RN, I was an internal medicine nurse practitioner. I've got a laundry list of medical people we've worked with. I can tell you just by thinking about it, because I have some people that I keep on my desk that I remember fondly, like Al, who was a sales rep who got his first tech job at Deloitte as a senior solutions architect. I can remember him. I can remember Pierre because he was working on sailboats in Canada before he got hired on LeaseWeb. I can remember Depend, who was working at Best Buy, but he finally got something fairly good in security. We worked with him. I can remember Vladimir, who was a 24-year-old college student who again got hired by North Highland. I can remember Jeffrey West. He was a geologist who got hired at Caliant. Your background doesn't matter. Daniel Bosu was a high school dropout, and he got hired by JP Morgan Chase after our training. I'm not worried about your background. But I'm more worried about your ability to develop the business skills, the leadership skills, the executive presence. What else have you done in your life? Where have you worked? What have you done?
Well, as somebody who's been involved in healthcare since I was basically out of high school, I've
Okay,
actually worked in management in departments, in interacting with staff, interacting with C-suite, interacting with reps from different companies. So I have that experience. I
good.
just,
That'll help
as a
you.
person coming from a totally, so to speak, a different profession, so to speak. I just don't know very much. In fact, I know zero about when I say tech. I'm in quotes.
That's better than someone that just took an AWS certification and is biased and knows all the wrong things. I mean, if somebody takes an AWS cloud practitioner, here's what they're taught. Cloud computing is cheaper. It's not. They tell you it's cheaper because there's an economy of scale, but what they don't tell you is cloud computing is hyperscale. And if anybody's ever worked for the government or seen anything big like a government, they understand why hyperscale can't be efficient because you need so much governance structure. And then they don't tell you that cloud computing is basically building you the same thing you used to pay for, but now we're going to market it, sell it to you, and add a profit margin, and then tell you it's cheaper. And that's why cloud computing is usually 2 to 3 times more expensive. I have no problem with cloud computing for agility migrations, but I'd rather have you without the bad habits, and start you from scratch. Your background doesn't matter. Your willingness to learn does. Your energy, enthusiasm, and passion does. Your attention to detail was. In fact, I think what's actually helped me most was growing up. For some ridiculous reason, I had to end up at my uncle's house. And my uncle was a drill sergeant in the Marine Corps. And every day he screamed at me, adapt, either attention to detail, lack of it was going to get me killed in war, even though I wasn't in war, or it was an adapt, improvise, and overcome. And I think that actually got me. I don't know your adaptability, but your adaptability, your ability to just learn and be new things, that's going to be the ability to determine how fast you go. But don't worry about your background. That's not a problem.
I was in the Navy for 8 years also, so that really did. When I started working in the operating room, the amount of attention to detail and patience and the high stakes were always ever present in your mind, and so that certainly propelled me. But thank you very much for your for answering my question. I appreciate it.
And thank you for your service. I take it your MOS was the first assistant in security.
No, I was a medical person the whole time.
Okay,
Awesome.
like a offending, and thank you for your service with that. It's
Yeah.
you're gonna do great. But that people interaction that you had to do, that's the stuff that really helps us. And when it comes to healthcare, no matter what, we always have to deliver some news that we don't want to do or deal with a constraint. That will probably be some of the best preparation you've actually ever had.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We appreciate you.
Very much so.
Anyone else have any questions? Let's see. Ernest, I think, did we acknowledge that one? Are there any aspects of the program that relates to container security? I want to know if my Kubernetes security or CKS skills are transferable.
Well, the answer is yes, there is a component of container security, but realize container security may be 1/1000th of everything that's covered in security. So yes, it is covered. But that's going to be the difference between the engineer. I can have an engineer do nothing other than focus on Kubernetes if I've got a really good Kubernetes engineer. And I can have a really good Kubernetes engineer in a huge scale just being focused on the control plane part of it. In this case, yes, there will be container security, like there'll be virtualization security. We'll also be evaluating the risks which are greater for example, in a container that a virtual machine. What is the possibility of a hypervisor escape versus a container escape? And there are times where containers are less secure. So being able to understand where the weaknesses are, how the hacker would hack it, and yes, we cover a lot of that in this program, Ernest, obviously, because containers are there too, and they're very important. Like all these questions today. People are thinking. I love this. Alonzo's got a mute button on. Doesn't realize that I do
I
it too.
love yeah, I get so excited. I love the thoughts of how you all are thinking about your
Yeah.
career, how you can platform from where you are, and what your overall goals are. So we're always happy to help you get from A to Z, or rather continuously, because there's no end to this training.
Yeah.
Mike, could you share with our audience what is the demand for security and how many roles are out there that need to be filled?
Prior to the $500 billion that we're going to be invested on AI, which is going to add more roles than you can think of in networking and security and data centers. But prior to that, there were 750,000 roles open in the US. And here's literally what it's like. You open a role, you interview someone, and no one knows anything about security. I mean, it's incredible. You can't find somebody. It's just so hard. Now, I can find a lot of people with an A plus or a security plus or an AWS security certification. But if I ask them, how do you design for security? Or if I ask them how to calculate risk or things that we could do to mitigate risk, or talk to me about perimeter security versus internal security, or talk to me about zero trust, no one knows anything. And because of that, it is so lucrative and there's just so many jobs. And if you look at how people do their job, and you'll understand the big problem. Everybody's version of learning is I'm just going to configure. But the problem is they don't actually know what they're actually configuring or why they're configuring it. So, Wayne, let's talk about the experience thing. I've never had experience when I got any of my jobs. It's how you actually present yourself. So it's how you actually do it. And for example, Michael Abraham, who started on this call, he was a college student when he came to me. Now he's working as a security architect. Now I'm going to tell you, I must have exchanged 80 Slack messages with Michael Abraham. And it did take him about 2 years to do it. It really did. But, he got there. So I don't know. Nobody cared about Ivan. Nobody cared about Arun, who was a Home Depot employee. Nobody cared about Jeffrey. Nobody cared about Richard, who went to MUFG Bank. Nobody cared about the other R that isn't some top secret agency that we can't even talk about because of NDAs. And his last job was in public communications. Or Q, who's in Atlanta, so, who got his first security job, or Delroy, who got his first. So I wouldn't really worry about it. Now, Wayne, I know you, and you're really smart. I haven't seen the kind of content that you're creating. So if you're creating some content, maybe tag me on it or let me know when you're going to do it on what do you call it on Slack. I want to see what kind of message you're putting out there. Are you showing that you that people need you? So if you can you come to class maybe tomorrow? I'm going to do a special day tomorrow where we talk about how to leverage the internships that every student has. So when they say Cloud Architect Associate and you can document your experience and talk about it. I know it's Valentine's Day, but I felt like it was really important. So Chris has got a fever, but we're still going to do it tomorrow. So please come there. But it's not, it's a messaging thing, Wayne. It's all related to messaging. And I definitely want to make sure we close that message thing.
Okay, Mike, we've got one from Adabimigbe, and he's asking how much technical hands-on and architectural diagrams do we get to cover during the training? All the technologies mentioned, do we get hands-on with them?
Can you come off mute? So,
Addy, okay.
Addy, can you come off mute?
We'd love to hear from you.
I see them saying hello in the chat box. So let's see if we can unmute them. Raise your hand if you can.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
There we go.
Hi, Addy. So,
Yeah,
Addy, what you'll do is you will architecturally learn and you will do hands-on architecture work versus designing them or some. Addy, I'm going to ask you a question. What field do you work in right now?
I'm in academia. I'm an associate professor in cybersecurity in the UK.
Okay.
And yeah,
okay.
So I've got masters in cybersecurity, and I still understand a bit of the financial aspects because I've got a master's in entrepreneurship as well.
Okay, good. So let's talk about the difference between the hands-on piece and the architecture piece.
Yeah.
Did you use your PC today?
Yes.
Could you tell me about the number of cores that are on the CPU of your PC, the frequency of those cores, the amount of level 1, level 2, and level 3 cache on that CPU, the impact of the level 1, level 2, and level 3 cache on your CPU's performance, the interface with your DRAM, the PCIe bus, and how many lanes it has, and how that would pertain to how much GPU performance you could do, and what your storage interfaces are, SATA, SAS versus NVMe? by using your computer?
No, but I understand some of the concepts, some of the terminologies you mentioned. Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this is if I train you in hands-on labs, here's
Mm-hmm.
what happens when I interview people that have done 1,000 hands-on labs. How
Yeah.
would you design your demilitarized zone? Huh? Could you talk to me about when I would integrate biometric authentication and what are the risks of false positive versus false negatives? And they say, huh? And I say, could you tell me the difference between IPsec and TLS security
Mhm.
from the perspective of privacy? And the person says, huh? So, yes, you will do some hands-on things, but I promise you, you're not going to learn any of what you need in hands-on.
Okay.
This is all about strategy. This is very much like a physician versus the nurse. The nurse carries out the plan, the physician designs the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, we'll get you hands-on so you can try some things, but that's not what's going to teach you.
Okay.
What's going to teach you is when we teach you, okay, these are the kinds of firewalls we have. Let's talk about how this kind of firewall tests code. Let's talk about the weaknesses of signature detection. Let's talk about the benefits of behavioral anomaly detection in heuristics.
Mm-hmm.
How would you use that? Okay, so let's talk about how we would collect logs, aggregate them into a SIEM system, use AI to correlate things and find things.
Yeah.
That's what you need to be able to do. And that's what we're going to teach you. And you're going to be able to design it. You'll be creating architecturals. You'll be presenting it back to our team. You'll be forced to sell it, forced to document it, respond to RFIs, RFPs, queues, everything you would as a real architect. And that way you're prepared to do the architecture job. Because I got to tell you, all of the students we have usually came from somebody else's boot camp and they've all done hundreds of projects. But okay, and here's the problem with the project. So I saw somebody this morning talk about how impressed he was with this project. He went in there and he set up a Linux machine and he mounted a block EBS block storage and he used this web server and he wrote some Python code. And you know why I don't care if I was a hiring manager? What I care as a hiring manager is why did what was the person's logic between using Linux or Windows? What was the goal of the application? How much performance? If they used, why did they use Apache versus Nginx? What was the application's intention? What was the experience like? So I care about everything from a hiring manager that's the exact opposite of what the person learned by building it. So
Mm.
how to design it? Yes, very, very important. How to build it? That's another story.
Okay. So essentially, you're saying that should be left to the security engineers to do, right?
The security engineers do the building. In
Okay.
fact, you won't even be allowed to touch the technology in any company.
What happens if you do, Mike?
You'll get fired. So, I mean, if you try to touch your customer's technology, you'd be fired.
Think of it this way: you already have a layer of multiple layers of hands-on people. You have your security engineers, dev spec ops, sec ops, you have your all these other people. Why would you need yet another layer of people who do hands-on? Who's talking with the customer? Who's understanding business requirements, constraints? Where are they with their business? Where have they been? Where are they going? What are their low-hanging fruit? What is their compliance? All these different questions and more. That's where we come in, regardless
Yeah.
of what type of discipline as an architect that you want to be or have been. So we're strategists and we need to understand the business so that we can figure out the best course possible utilizing these type of appliances that's best for the business.
Yeah. So essentially, using aligning technology to business goals and
Exactly.
security that doesn't inhibit the security, aligned with security policies and also aligned with the business goals of the organization as well.
Exactly. How do
Yeah.
you protect the organization, its people, and its processes from risk? And the whole point of all architecture is ultimately business optimization. Should
Mm,
sound a lot like strategy consulting to you, because that's exactly what it is.
mm. Okay.
And it is
So,
really a great job. But I'm not, the pragmatic side is you're not going to pay somebody $150 US dollars an hour to configure a firewall. You can either pay somebody 30 or $40 a technician, an admin to do that, or you could outsource it. But the architect, you're paying a lot because the executive calls, the understanding of the business, those types of things.
Okay.
so, just to add to that, how well do they need to? Does the security architect need to know enterprise architecture?
Pretty well. And that's why we mix it with the cloud architecture, and there's some enterprise architecture training here. Now, enterprise architecture is the exact opposite. So what I mean by this is the security architect is a focused specialist on security. But what determines any architect's real value at the end of the day? Did they provide any benefit to the business? And if they didn't provide any benefit to the business and the company invested $1 billion in something, you actually hurt the business. And in 70% of all cases, the architecture fails to provide any business value, which means it hurt the business. And why do these bad architectures hurt the business? You only have so much amount of money, right? You can only invest it in one thing. So you can invest it by giving it to the employees, for example, which would make the employees probably happier and work more and be more productive. You could return it to the shareholders and make the stock price go up, or you can increase net income or something. But if you take the money away from the business with tech and don't provide any value for it, you're hurting the business. They don't have those resources somewhere else.
Mm.
So
Okay.
yeah, you're gonna have to know a lot of business. And we've got a lot of things in there from financial statements to balance sheets to anything that you would honestly ever need to be successful in this role.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Let's see what else we have here. Okay. Let me see. I think we already responded to Wayne. Kanoi, if you can ask your questions here, if you want career advice, speak directly with Mike. Mike has been there, done that. He's done a lot of great things. But also, if you like, feel free to set up a Calendly call with myself. I answer them mostly along with our team. So I'm happy to share any information you may have, or you can reach out also at info@gocloudcareers.net. So
I'm
if
here
you,
and I'm happy to do what I can.
that's what we're here for. We want that one thing that I don't want. It's been kind of bad that the industry has compacted training into these cohorts or these blocks. You cannot compound, or rather, you can't constrain a career into a block of time. You know, if you want certification training, there's tons of people who can do that for you. But we're trying to get people to a level of having a career, and that could expand decades. How do you quantify that into a small block of
Yeah.
6, 8 weeks or whatever? So it's not fair to people to charge that. It's not fair for people to put that in that small block of time, whereas we do long form continuous training, which is why I share with a lot of people, we don't do chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, over again. This is continuous and it focuses on business cases. What is it? We're basically in our classes, you're basically showing up for work. The difference between where you want to be and where you are right now is a paycheck. But we're getting you to that point where you're going to be competent, capable, you're going to have interdepartmental skills, you're going to have communication skills, soft skills, emotional intelligence, business acumen. You're going to be able to talk to business leaders. I don't care if they're making 300,000 or $3 million a year.
Yeah.
You're going to have the competence, capability, and the ability to share detailed strategic answers and questions in a way that they understand. And you're going to be known for your ability to lead the charge, be SMEs as needed, and be able to adapt in this architectural role, no matter what it is. So ask away. That's what we're here for. So I'm getting off my
There's a question
soapbox.
for
I
you.
love this stuff. A
Looks like
question
there's a
for
question
me.
for you.
Okay, Travis, Alonzo, would you tell us about your background? Okay, so I originally am from the other side of the brain. I used to be a creative director many moons ago, and I got to a point where I was burned out. You know, I love speaking with clients. I love speaking with understanding their strategic ways on how to be able to sell their product or their services creative. I had an opportunity to work on commercials. I even created characters for specific cereals. But it got to a point where different technologies were slowly replacing, and then you're thinking about a global market of people who are able to do exactly what I'm doing according to their economy. So if you're working against people who are able to crank out 100 logos for $50, People tend to want to go that way without understanding the branding, the quality of service that I was or my company was providing at the time. Moving on, I evolved into a project manager, a program manager. Then I started realizing the value of tech. I didn't know if I was going to find anything that I love so much as creativity and creating documents and doing all sorts of branding and marketing initiatives until I found cloud. And then I ran into this conundrum. Trying to find out who could train me, who could give me what I needed instead of what they thought I should have. So I came across Go Cloud Careers. I got trained by Mike, became a cloud architect, did a lot of great things with a lot of different organizations. Now I'm evolving into an AI architect. So I've been able to collectively bring my marketing, my ability to speak to business leaders, my ability to understand different personalities, my ability to use soft skills, emotional intelligence, strategy, execution, and a lot of other things that I've been able to bring throughout my sojourn as a professional. And now I have it rounded out here, and I've been able to continually evolve that as an AI architect as well. So that's been my pedigree. It's been a wonderful ride, but ultimately, as an architect, it has been more rewarding than anything else I've done in my life.
I really think it's the best job. I begged Alonzo, we trained him. Could you please come back? Alonzo, we're like really good friends. Please come back. My students need you. Plus, Alonzo's 30 years of marketing experience teaches people how to build a brand. And when you want employers coming to you and you've got a marketing executive on your side who also holds an MBA, it's pretty helpful. So that's Alonzo. Real big.
You got any other questions about me? Feel free to send a calendar call and how we can transform regardless. Now, remember, I'm not coming from a tech background. I'm not coming from any of that. And I was a far cry from that, but being able to utilize where you are, regardless of what you've done, as a foundation, we'll add on the rest, we'll hone the rest, and we'll continually do that until we get you to a high sheen, a high polish, and then we're going to be able to share your accolades, your ability to do the job. We're going to work on your resume. We're going to help hone your LinkedIn profile because they're definitely not on Monster. They're not on Career Builder. They're here on LinkedIn. And we're going to help hone wherever you are right now and be able to convert your brand into becoming an architect by helping you focus on thought leadership documents, thought leadership posts, thought leadership articles, and be able to showcase to the world what you know how to do. They're going to want to know more about you. And by building relationships with key stakeholders, with people who are in paying job that you want and organizations that you want to work for, they'll start building that collective networking experience, and the next thing you know, you will be at arriving at a job of your choice. So who else has got something for us? I and Mike are always looking to add. You can see by the energy that we share, we love this. We love helping. We love to be able to provide these things that you need to be successful. So I think we are it. I know that we are 9 minutes over, and we thank you all for joining us. We are always excited to help you all. We do this on a weekly basis. We're going to be here on Thursday, the next Thursday, the following Thursday. So please refer to us at gocloudcareers.com. Ask more information about us at info@gocloudcareers.net. Reach out to me or any of our staff via Calendly, via a video call. Now, I've noticed that a lot of people are waiting for me to call. I'm not calling or any of our staff. We're going to be meeting you via Google Meet. Click that link when it's your date and time, and we will be there to refer any questions, answer any questions, talk about any topics within that 20-minute span of our discussion time. So if you want to continually ask more questions and ran out of time, schedule another one. I will be here. So thank you so much for taking the time to ask these awesome questions. Thank you so much to the two people that have had experiences with us, had wonderful experiences, and decided to take the time to share how wonderful of an experience and time that they've had with Go Cloud Careers, how we've helped them, how we've edified them, and how they're thriving in their particular roles because of what we do here at Go Cloud Careers. So, Mike, I could talk all day. I love it here. Back to you.
So I'm going to end with a couple of things. For those of you that signed up that want to attend a class today, you don't have to, but if you want to attend class today and it begins in 50 minutes, I'd love to see you in class. The average security architect earns about $1,000 a day or so. So I don't want you waiting an additional day. If you want to join today, I'm excited to meet you today. So there is that. For those of you that actually did join, you'll receive an email from Go Cloud Architects. Please look for that email. Please read that email. I don't want anybody to buy a course and not be successful because they didn't know where to find things. So please read that email. For those of you that joined, can't wait to work from you. For the others that didn't yet, if you'd like to work with us, we'd love to work with you. If not, I'm so happy we could meet you and talk to you and hopefully guide you to get to your goals. Take care, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you soon.